Welcome to Lunar Lullabies. Hello, dear traveler. I'm so glad you've joined us tonight on Lunar Lullabies. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Our channel is here to bring you captivating bedtime stories that help you relax, dive into a world of intrigue, and find peace before sleep. Tonight, I invite you to a modern adventure filled with mystery, betrayal, and revenge, but ultimately, serenity. Picture yourself in the heart of a sprawling metropolis, where skyscrapers gleam with neon lights, and the streets hum with the rhythm of life. You hear the distant sound of traffic, feel the cool night air on your skin, and above you, the stars are faint, nearly hidden by the city's glow. At the center of our story is Elias Kane, a young programmer whose talent and dreams are shattered by the betrayal and greed of those he trusted most. His friends frame him, and he's sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. But fate grants him a chance at vengeance, and a new life. Will Elias reclaim his freedom? And will he find peace after his journey through the shadows of the skyline? This tale is a modern retelling of the classic Count of Monte Cristo, woven with tension, intrigue, and secrets, but wrapped in a gentle ending to lull you into rest. Are you ready for this journey? Close your eyes, take a deep breath, feel the pulse of the city, and let the story begin. You're standing in a sleek office on the 50th floor of a skyscraper, where glass walls reflect the city's glow, and the air hums with the scent of fresh coffee and the soft buzz of computers. Elias Kane, a 28-year-old programmer with dark, slightly tousled hair and piercing gray eyes, sits at his desk, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. He's working on a revolutionary AI algorithm that can predict financial markets with uncanny accuracy, analyzing millions of data points in seconds. His startup, Skyline Tech, buzzes with excitement. The team is small but ambitious, and investors are already offering millions for this project, poised to transform the financial world. Elias is a humble guy from a small town who rose to the big city through sheer talent and hard work. His best friend, Marcus, a charming marketer with a perfect smile and an always impeccable suit, has supported him since their university days, when they dreamed of great things together. Dana, an ambitious project manager with a sharp mind and a cold gaze, admires Elias's ideas, though her admiration feels more calculated than genuine. Victor, the company's lawyer, a middle-aged man with a sharp tongue and icy confidence, promises to protect their intellectual property from competitors. Elias trusts them all. They're his team, his second family, and together, they're building a future. We'll change the world, he tells Marcus over coffee on the office rooftop, the stars barely visible through the city's smog. Marcus laughs, raising his cup. You're a genius, Elias. We'll all get rich because of you. But behind the scenes, a web of betrayal is already being spun, dark and sticky like a spider's trap in a forgotten basement. Dana, jealous of Elias's success, sees his algorithm as a chance not just to get rich, but to become one of the most powerful women in tech. She secretly conspires with Marcus, who, despite his friendship with Elias, has long craved fame and wealth beyond a marketer's reach. Marcus hesitates, but greed wins. He agrees to help Dana steal the project. Victor, a corrupt lawyer with ties to Skyline Tech's competitors, sees an opportunity to profit and solidify his power. He agrees to help, but only if they frame Elias for a cybercrime, planting evidence so airtight that no one will suspect the truth. They fabricate emails, fake transactions, making it look like Elias hacked major corporations, and hand the evidence to the authorities, knowing the system will swallow an innocent man whole. On a cool evening, as Elias celebrates the algorithm's completion with the team, ordering pizza and popping champagne, the office door bursts open. Police storm in, their heavy boots thudding on the floor, their voices booming like thunder. Elias Kane, you're under arrest for suspected fraud and cyber attack, an officer barks, his face as stern as stone. Elias freezes, his champagne glass slipping from his hand, shattering on the floor into glittering shards like tears. He shouts that it's a mistake, that he's innocent, but his words drown in the clatter of handcuffs snapping onto his wrists, cold and heavy as his fate. Marcus looks away, his hands trembling as he shoves them into his pockets. Dana smirks faintly, a predator who's cornered her prey. Victor stands aside, his eyes cold as ice, watching as Elias is dragged from the office, his dreams crumbling in an instant. Elias glances back one last time, seeing his life shatter, and finds himself in prison, alone and broken, unaware of who truly betrayed him, or why. Chapter 2, in chains. You're standing in a cramped, cold prison cell, where the air is heavy with the scent of dampness, mold, and metal, and a faint light flickers through a small, rusted window, barely letting in a gray sliver of sky. Elias Kane sits on the concrete floor, his back against the wall, his eyes hollow like a burned field, his hands still bruised from the handcuffs, trembling with shock and despair. It's been a month since his arrest, but the trial was swift and unjust, like lightning on a clear day. The fabricated evidence, meticulously crafted by Dana, Marcus, and Victor, was airtight: fake emails, forged financial transactions, making it look like Elias hacked major corporations and stole millions. He's sentenced to 15 years for a cybercrime he didn't commit, and now his life is gray walls, the shouts of other inmates, and a chill that seeps into his bones. Elias has lost everything: his job at Skyline Tech, where he dreamed of changing the world, his friends, who he thought were his support, and his freedom, which he once took for granted like air. His algorithm, the work of years, now belongs to Skyline Tech, and Dana and Marcus have become billionaires, basking in the fame and fortune they stole from him. Dana graces magazine covers as Tech Woman of the Year, her cold smile gleaming on glossy pages, while Marcus hosts a popular podcast on innovation, claiming his success as if he created the algorithm. Victor, using his connections and corrupt schemes, has been promoted to city prosecutor, his name now tied to fighting cybercrime, though he's knee-deep in filth. Elias sees their faces on the tiny TV in the prison cafeteria, where inmates mock his crime, and his heart burns with pain, anger, and helplessness. Each night, lying on a hard cot, the rusted springs creaking beneath him, hearing distant shouts of guards, Elias recalls his past life, laughing with Marcus, Dana praising his ideas, Victor promising protection. He tries to understand why they did this, but there's no answer, only an emptiness gnawing at him. His hands clench into fists, his eyes brimming with tears he holds back, knowing weakness here could cost him his life. One dreary morning, as rain drums on the prison roof, a new inmate is brought to his cell, Professor Abel, an elderly man with a gray beard, a weathered face, and piercing eyes that shine with wisdom despite his fatigue. Abel, a former tech mogul, was convicted of financial fraud but claims he was framed by competitors who feared his influence. He quickly notices Elias's talent when Elias fixes an old radio in the prison workshop using just a wire and a scrap of metal. "You've got a mind, kid," Abel says, his voice raspy but strong. "Don't let this place break you." Abel becomes Elias's mentor, his only light in the darkness of prison life. He teaches him hacking, financial strategies, and the art of social engineering, skills Abel honed at the peak of his tech career. "The world's a chessboard," Abel says, his eyes glinting as he traces imaginary moves on the dusty cell floor, "and you need to learn to play if you want to survive, and take back what's yours." Elias listens, his anger slowly turning to resolve, his despair to a plan. Abel also shares a secret, a hidden cryptocurrency wallet worth billions, stashed away before his arrest, its access encrypted in a complex code. "If I don't make it out, it's yours," he promises, handing Elias a small paper with the encrypted key, "but use it wisely." Elias clutches the paper, feeling a new spark of hope ignite in his heart. Chapter 3, The Escape. You're standing in the dark prison yard, where a cold wind whistles between high concrete walls, and distant spotlights cast shadows that dance like ghosts. Elias has been in prison for 2 years, each day a gray, cold blur of humiliation and pain. But Abel's death from a heart attack last month lit a fire in him he hasn't felt before. Abel left him not just knowledge, but a key to freedom, the code to a cryptocurrency wallet that could change his life. First, though, Elias must escape, and he knows it'll be the most dangerous step he's ever taken. He's prepared meticulously, using everything Abel taught him. The prison has an old ventilation system, hidden behind a basement storage room, rarely checked by guards who think it's too narrow for escape. Elias has spent weeks observing the guards' schedules, memorizing their routes and shift changes. He's also used his hacking skills to disable the surveillance cameras. One evening, during the inmates' nightly head count, he sneaks into the control room, plugging in a small device Abel helped him build from a broken phone scraps. The device shuts down the cameras for 10 minutes, creating a brief window for his escape. Elias crawls through the ventilation shaft, his heart pounding so loudly he fears it'll be heard through the thick walls. The air inside is stale, reeking of rust and mold, and the narrow space makes him feel as if he's being buried alive. The metal walls chill his skin, sharp edges scraping his hands and knees, leaving bloody scratches. But Elias doesn't stop. He whispers to himself, "Freedom. Freedom is worth it," and the words fuel his resolve to keep moving. Finally, he emerges outside, finding himself in the prison's back courtyard, where rain pours like a deluge, and lightning splits the sky, illuminating the field stretching toward a forest. The rain masks the sound of his footsteps, and Elias runs, his feet sinking into the mud, his heart pounding with fear and hope. He reaches a small town a few miles from the prison, where he buys an old laptop with cash Abel had advised him to keep, just in case. In a cheap motel, the stench of cigarette smoke ingrained in the walls, Elias connects to the internet through an anonymous VPN and enters Abel's code. The screen displays a sum, billions in Bitcoin, hidden in an anonymous wallet. Elias freezes, his fingers trembling over the keyboard, realizing he's now one of the richest men in the world. But the money is just a tool. His heart burns with a thirst for revenge, and he knows where to direct his newfound power. Elias learns that in the 3 years since his arrest, Dana has become CEO of Skyline Tech, turning his algorithm into a billion-dollar product. Marcus is a famous tech influencer, his face plastered on billboards, ads, and YouTube. Victor, through his corruption, is now the city prosecutor, covering up the dirty deeds of local tycoons. Elias clenches his fists, his eyes blazing with anger, whispering, "You'll pay. All of you." He creates a new identity. Now he's the Shadow, a mysterious billionaire who reappears in the city 3 years after his escape. Elias changes his appearance. He cuts his long, disheveled hair, buys dark sunglasses to hide his piercing gray eyes, and dons expensive suits that highlight his new confidence. He purchases a penthouse in the city center, with a view of the shimmering skyscrapers, and begins plotting his revenge, knowing his enemies have no idea who's behind their looming downfall. Chapter 4. The Shadow returns. You're standing in a lavish party hall atop one of the city's tallest skyscrapers, where champagne glasses sparkle under crystal chandeliers, and guests in expensive suits and evening gowns laugh to the melodies of a jazz band playing in the corner. The air is filled with the scent of high-end perfume, mingling with the faint aroma of caviar canapes offered on silver trays by waiters. Elias, now known as the Shadow, enters the room, his steps confident, his dark, perfectly tailored suit accentuating his newfound, icy charisma. Dark sunglasses hide his gray eyes, which once shone with hope but now burn with a thirst for justice. His arrival stirs whispers among the guests. No one knows who he is, but his aura of wealth and mystery draws attention. He introduces himself as an investor interested in partnering with Skyline Tech, and quickly spots Dana at the center of the room, surrounded by a group of businessmen. She's dressed in an elegant, deep wine-colored gown, her blonde hair swept into an updo, a cold, professional smile on her lips. Dana doesn't recognize Elias. She thinks of him only as a distant memory, a man she destroyed to climb to the top. She extends her hand, her voice sweet as honey. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Shadow. I hear you're interested in innovation. Skyline Tech is the perfect partner for you." Elias smiles, but his smile is as cold as a winter wind as he replies, "I'm sure we'll find common ground, Dana." His voice is low, with a faint edge of irony, but Dana is too wrapped in her mask of confidence to notice. Elias spots Marcus by the bar, snapping selfies for social media, a glass of whiskey in hand, smiling for his audience through the phone's camera. His white suit and gold watch scream wealth, but Elias knows the emptiness hiding behind that facade. Marcus was once his best friend, the person he shared dreams and secrets with, but now he's a traitor who sold their friendship for fame and fortune. In the corner of the room stands Victor, now the city prosecutor, his face stern, his eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for threats. He's speaking with a group of influential figures, his voice low and commanding, but Elias knows the corruption lurking beneath that mask, the corruption that ruined his life. Elias feels anger boiling in his chest, but he keeps his composure, his face a mask of calm. He knows their weaknesses, having spent weeks since his escape hacking their emails, phone calls, and bank accounts. Dana fears losing power. Her position at Skyline Tech rests on lies and manipulation. Marcus relies on fame, his audience the only thing keeping him afloat. Victor hides corrupt schemes that could destroy his career if exposed. Elias decides to start with Marcus, knowing his fall will be the first domino to topple the others. Using his billions, Elias anonymously buys the company sponsoring Marcus through proxies, ensuring no one links it to him. Then he leaks compromising material, recordings of Marcus bragging about getting rid of a competitor, meaning Elias, and documents showing he laundered money through shell companies. Social media erupts, #MarcusFraud trends, and Marcus loses contracts one by one, his fame dissolving like smoke in the wind. Elias watches from the shadows, seated in his penthouse, his laptop open to news pages, a faint smile on his lips. Dana, learning of Marcus's downfall, senses a threat looming like a dark cloud. She hires a private investigator to uncover who's behind the scandal, suspecting someone from the past has returned to destroy them all. But she can't connect it to Elias, whom she believes is still broken in prison. Meanwhile, Elias befriends a young journalist, Sophia, who's investigating corruption in the city. He anonymously sends her information on Victor, proof of his ties to the local mafia, knowing she'll dig up the dirt and strike another blow at his enemy. Elias stands on his penthouse balcony, a glass of whiskey in hand, gazing at the city below. He whispers, "This is just the beginning," his voice a promise of the storm to come. Chapter 5. The first strike. You're in Skyline Tech's spacious conference room, where glass walls reflect the city's glow, and the air is thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. Dana is leading a meeting with investors, her face pale, her hands clutching a tablet with a slight tremble despite her efforts to appear composed. She's just learned of Marcus's scandal, his reputation is in tatters, and it casts a shadow over the entire company, as Marcus was its public face, the one who drew attention to Skyline Tech. Investors whisper among themselves, their eyes filled with doubt, while Dana tries to maintain her cool, though her voice wavers as she says, "This is a temporary issue. We'll handle it." But her words ring hollow, like an echo in an empty room. Elias, as the shadow, sits at the end of the table among the investors, his dark suit and sunglasses making him look like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His face is a mask of calm, but inside, his heart races with anticipation. He offers Skyline Tech a massive investment, an amount too large to refuse, but with a condition: Dana must hand over control of the algorithm Elias created to this new investor, meaning him. "It's just business, Dana," he says, his voice low and steady, like a whisper of wind. "Your company needs stability, and I can provide it." Dana hesitates, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. The algorithm is her greatest asset, the heart of Skyline Tech, and she knows losing it would make her position as precarious as a house of cards in a gale. But Elias knows how to exploit her weaknesses. That night, he anonymously hacks into the company's system, using a backdoor he coded in the early days of Skyline Tech. He unleashes a virus that disrupts the company's financial transactions, and overnight, Skyline Tech loses millions as clients can't access their data. The stock plummets, the market buzzes with panic, and investors demand answers. Dana, under pressure from the board and facing total collapse, is forced to agree to the Shadow's terms, unaware that behind the mask is Elias, the man she destroyed for her own gain. Elias regains control of his creation, but this is only part of his plan. He knows Dana won't give up easily and prepares for his next move. Meanwhile, Sophia, the young journalist with fiery eyes and a determined spirit, publishes the article Elias sent her anonymously. It exposes Victor's corrupt ties to the local mafia, evidence Elias gathered by hacking Victor's phone and email. The article details how Victor took bribes to cover up illegal dealings and used his position to eliminate anyone in his way, including Elias. It becomes a sensation, and Victor, feeling his career at risk, starts looking for someone to blame. He suspects Dana, thinking she leaked the information to divert attention from her own troubles, and the tension between them grows, a crack in glass ready to shatter. Elias watches from the shadows, seated in his penthouse, where massive windows offer a view of the city glittering at night. His laptop is open to news pages with headlines screaming about Victor's scandal, while another screen shows charts of Skyline Tech's plummeting stocks. He feels his enemies beginning to turn on each other, and it brings him satisfaction, but also a growing emptiness in his heart. He recalls Abel's words from prison: "Revenge is a tool, not a goal. Don't lose yourself in it, kid." Elias gazes at his reflection in the window, his face half lit by the city's neon, half hidden in shadow, wondering if he's already lost a part of himself in this game. But he quickly pushes the thought aside. His plan isn't finished, and he won't stop until he sees all his enemies fall. Chapter 6. Fractures among enemies. You're seated in a luxurious restaurant on a skyscraper's top floor, where candlelight dances on white tablecloths, and waiters in white gloves move silently between tables, serving dishes worth more than a month's salary for most. In a corner, Dana and Victor meet at a table hidden behind heavy velvet curtains to keep their conversation private. But the tension between them is palpable, like electricity in the air before a storm. Victor, his face red with anger, accuses Dana of leaking the information that led to his corruption scandal. "You gave that journalist those documents, didn't you? You're trying to distract from your mess at Skyline Tech." His voice is low but seething, and he barely restrains himself from shouting. Dana, her eyes blazing with indignation, snaps back, "Don't you dare blame me, Victor. You promised protection, but now I'm drowning because of your incompetence." Their argument draws the attention of a few guests, who glance their way, whispering among themselves. Elias sits at a nearby table, disguised as an indifferent businessman. He's dressed in a navy suit, his sunglasses reflecting the candlelight, a faint smile on his lips. He's ordered a glass of red wine and pretends to read a financial newspaper, but he's listening to every word Dana and Victor say. Their rift is exactly what he hoped for, and he knows how to widen it until their alliance crumbles completely. Elias pulls out his phone and sends anonymous messages to Marcus, posing as Victor. The messages accuse Marcus of causing all their troubles. "You ruined everything, Marcus. Your scandal put us all at risk. You'll pay for this." Marcus, sitting in his lavish apartment surrounded by expensive gadgets and empty whiskey bottles, reads the messages, his face paling with fear and fury. He's already on edge after the scandal that destroyed his career, and these words from Victor are the final straw. He dials Dana, his voice shaking with rage. "You and Victor are trying to pin everything on me, aren't you? I won't let you destroy me." Dana, fresh from her argument with Victor, screams back, "You brought this on yourself, Marcus. You shouldn't have run your mouth about our deal." Their call ends in threats, and Elias, listening through Marcus's hacked phone, feels his plan working better than he'd hoped. Dana, shaken by Marcus's threats, decides to act. She turns to her underworld contacts, hiring a team of hackers to find the Shadow and stop him before he destroys her completely. But Elias, anticipating this, is prepared. He hacks the hackers' systems, redirecting their search to fake leads, pointing them to a shell company in another country. The hackers report to Dana that the Shadow likely operates from offshore, and she panics, feeling her unseen enemy is always a step ahead. Meanwhile, Sophia continues her investigation. She sits in her small apartment, surrounded by notes and old newspapers, reviewing court records from Elias Kane's case. She notices inconsistencies in the evidence. Transactions supposedly made by Elias originated from Skyline Tech's IP address, not his. Her journalist instincts tell her the Shadow, who appeared in the city alongside these scandals, might be linked to Elias. She tries contacting him, sending messages through anonymous darknet channels, but Elias avoids her, not ready to reveal his identity. Elias returns to his penthouse late at night, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. He sits at his desk, opening his laptop to a city map where he's marked his enemies with red dots. Dana, Marcus, Victor, they're all starting to crumble, but Elias feels the tension rising. Sophia is getting too close to the truth, and if she uncovers his identity, everything could unravel. He clenches his fists, his eyes burning with determination, whispering, "Just a little longer. I won't stop." Chapter 7. Sophia closes in. You're standing in Sophia's cluttered apartment, where the walls are covered with notes, newspaper clippings, and red strings connecting names, dates, and companies like a web of investigation. Sophia, a young journalist with fiery brown eyes and short chestnut hair, sits at her old wooden desk, her laptop open to court records from Elias Kane's case. A cold cup of coffee sits on the desk, forgotten as she's immersed in her work, her notebook filled with her neat handwriting. She's been reviewing documents for hours, her eyes alight with excitement. She's found inconsistencies that could change everything. Sophia notices that the transactions Elias supposedly made came from an IP address registered to Skyline Tech, not his personal computer. Moreover, the emails used as key evidence against him have odd timestamps, as if they were created after the fact. She also finds old interviews with Dana and Marcus, where they mention that tragedy with our colleague, but their words sound too cold, too rehearsed. Her journalist instincts, which have never failed her, tell her Elias was framed, and that the Shadow, the mysterious billionaire who appeared alongside these scandals, might be connected to him. She whispers to herself, if Elias Kane is alive, then the Shadow is him. She recalls seeing the Shadow at several parties she infiltrated as a guest to gather information on city corruption. She noticed how he watched Dana and Victor, his movements always cautious, his gaze cold and calculated. She pulls out her phone and reviews photos she secretly took at one party. The Shadow stands by a window, his profile clear against the city lights, and though his face is partially hidden, something about his posture feels familiar. She compares it to an old photo of Elias from Skyline Tech's archives, and though his appearance has changed, there's something in the set of his eyes that makes her heart race. Elias, learning of her investigation by hacking her email, feels a threat looming like a dark cloud. He sits in his penthouse, his laptop open to Sophia's emails, reading them with cold curiosity. He sees how close she's getting to the truth, and it worries him. If she exposes his identity, his plan could collapse. Yet he feels a strange admiration for her persistence and honesty, qualities he lacked in the friends who betrayed him. He sends her an anonymous message through an encrypted app: "Stay away from the shadow if you want to live." But this only fuels her curiosity, and Sophia replies, "I'm not afraid. I want the truth." Meanwhile, Elias prepares his next strike. He uses his influence to trigger a financial audit of Skyline Tech, knowing Dana has hidden millions in offshore accounts for money laundering. He anonymously tips off the tax authorities, who swiftly launch an investigation. Dana, learning of this, feels her empire crumbling. Her phone buzzes with calls from furious investors, and her lawyers warn she could face prison. She blames Victor, believing he failed to protect her, and their feud intensifies as they meet in her office late at night. Dana shouts, "You promised we'd be safe. Now I could lose everything." Victor replies coldly, "You brought this on yourself, Dana. You took too many risks." Elias watches their argument through cameras he installed in Dana's office, feeling his plan unfold perfectly. But thoughts of Sophia linger. She's getting too close, and he must decide how to handle her. Can he trust her, or should he remove her from his path? He stands by his window, gazing at the city glowing below, feeling tension grip his chest. His revenge moves forward, but the cost he's paying grows heavier with each step. Chapter 8, Dana's downfall. You're in a courtroom, where the air is heavy with tension, and the sounds of whispers and rustling papers fill the space. Dana stands before the judge, her face pale as chalk, her hands clasped in front of her, trembling despite her efforts to seem composed. She's dressed in a stern business suit, but her once perfect hairstyle is disheveled, and her eyes, always sharp with cold determination, are now filled with fear. The investigation Elias triggered uncovered her financial crimes, millions she laundered through offshore accounts, using Skyline Tech as a front. Tax authorities found the evidence, and now Skyline Tech teeters on the brink of bankruptcy, its stocks at an all-time low, investors who once praised Dana now turning away, demanding their money back. The judge reads the verdict, his voice steady and severe: "Dana Lawrence, on charges of financial fraud, money laundering, and corporate conspiracy, you are sentenced to 10 years in prison." Dana freezes, her eyes widening in horror as officers approach to cuff her. She turns to the room, her gaze searching for someone to save her, but she sees only the cold faces of former partners and journalists capturing her fall on camera. Elias sits in the back among the spectators, his face shadowed, his sunglasses hiding his emotions. He watches as Dana is led away, her steps unsteady, her shoulders slumped, and feels his heart tighten, not with joy, but with a strange emptiness filling his chest. He remembers working with Dana in Skyline Tech's early days, when their team of 5 squeezed into a tiny office with no AC. Dana was different then, ambitious but genuine, and they dreamed together of changing the world through tech. But greed and power changed her, and she betrayed him, destroying his life for her own success. Elias thought her fall would bring him satisfaction, but instead, he feels only exhaustion and sorrow. He whispers to himself, it was supposed to feel different, but his words are lost in the courtroom's noise as the doors close behind Dana with a loud click. Victor, learning of Dana's fall, begins to panic. He sits in his office, his fingers tapping nervously on the desk as he scans news on his tablet. Headlines scream about Dana's arrest, but his thoughts are on his own fate. He knows he could be next, as Sophia's article on his corruption has already sparked suspicion. He hires men to find the shadow, using his underworld ties, but Elias is ready. He hacks Victor's phone, accessing his correspondence with the mafia, and sends the evidence to Sophia, knowing she'll use it to finish Victor off. Elias slips out of the courtroom, blending into the crowd of buzzing journalists and onlookers. He returns to his penthouse, where silence wraps around him like a soft blanket. He tosses his sunglasses onto the table, steps to the massive window overlooking the city, and opens his laptop to news pages shouting, Skyline Tech CEO sentenced to 10 years. He stares at the screen, but his mind drifts to memories of Dana's laughter in better days, and the emptiness in his heart grows. He pours himself a whiskey, though he rarely drinks, and sinks into a leather chair. Victor is his next target, the man who sealed his fate with false evidence. Elias knows this evidence could ruin Victor, but he wants him to feel the same fear and helplessness Elias endured. Sophia, meanwhile, prepares her next article, the evidence from Elias, a bombshell that could endanger her life. She sends another message to the shadow: I know you're tied to Elias Kane. Meet me, or I publish everything. Elias reads it, his heart racing. He agrees to meet her at a quiet cafe in the old part of town, hoping to control the situation. Standing by his window, neon lights reflecting in his eyes, he whispers, "Can I finish this without losing myself?" His revenge nears its peak, but the price grows heavier. Chapter 9, Victor under fire. You're in Victor's office, where the air is thick with the scent of expensive cologne and tension that crackles like static electricity. Victor sits behind his massive dark wood desk, his face red with rage, his fingers drumming nervously on the surface as he shouts at his assistants. How could this happen? Who let this leak? His voice thunders, his eyes blazing with fury. On his computer screen is Sophia's article, published just hours ago, exposing his corrupt ties to the local mafia. The headline screams, "City prosecutor in bed with crime, the truth about Victor Reigns." The article details how Victor took bribes, covered up illegal operations, and even threatened witnesses to maintain his power. His assistants, young lawyers in pristine suits, stand with their eyes lowered, too afraid to respond. One finally dares to speak, his voice trembling. "Sir, we don't know where she got this information, but the city council is already demanding your resignation." Victor shoots to his feet, his chair scraping back with a loud thud, and hurls his whiskey glass at the wall, where it shatters into tiny pieces, splattering amber liquid across the carpet. "I'm not going down that easily," he roars, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and fear. But deep down, he knows his career is over. Sophia's article was the final blow, and now he faces an investigation that could land him in prison. Elias watches it all through cameras he installed in Victor's office weeks ago. He sits in his penthouse, his laptop streaming the live feed, a cold smile playing on his lips. He knows Victor is panicking, and that's exactly what he wanted, to make him feel the same helplessness Elias felt when he was arrested. But Elias doesn't stop there. He sends anonymous messages to several influential city figures, attaching the evidence he gathered, recordings of Victor's conversations with the mafia, arranging to solve problems. These messages quickly reach the city council, and within hours, Victor is officially fired as prosecutor, his office sealed off for the investigation. Meanwhile, Elias prepares for his meeting with Sophia. He arrives at a quiet cafe in the old part of town, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingles with the aroma of aged wood and books. The cafe is nearly empty, with only a few patrons tucked away in corners, lost in their conversations. Elias chooses a table by the window, overlooking a narrow cobblestone street, and waits. Sophia enters a few minutes later, her face set with determination, though her eyes betray a hint of fear. She sits across from him, her hands clutching her bag, and speaks softly, "You're Elias Kane, aren't you? I know your story. You came back to take revenge." Elias looks at her, his face unreadable, but inside, his heart tightens. He removes his sunglasses, revealing his gray eyes that once shone with hope but are now filled with pain and resolve. "Yes, I'm Elias," he says, his voice low and steady. "They took everything from me, my freedom, my dreams, my life. I'm just taking back justice." Sophia nods, her eyes softening with understanding, but she adds, "I can help you. I've been investigating your case for years. I can clear your name." Elias hesitates. He doesn't want his past to go public, it could derail his plan. But he sees in Sophia an honesty he lacked in his friends, and a chance for a fresh start. He agrees to work with her but asks her to keep his identity secret until he finishes his revenge. "Fine," Sophia says, her voice firm, "but promise me you won't lose yourself in this." Elias nods, but deep down, he knows it's a promise he might not be able to keep. Chapter 10, The final blow to Marcus. You're at another lavish party in a sleek loft, where guests in designer suits and dresses laugh, sipping champagne, the air pulsing with music and the hum of conversation. But the center of attention is Marcus, who was once a tech world star but is now desperately trying to salvage his reputation after the scandal that shattered his career. He stands by the bar, his white suit out of place among the darker tones of the party, his smile as fake as a plastic mask. Guests avoid him, whispering behind his back, and Marcus feels his world crumbling, but he still tries to keep up appearances, snapping selfies for social media as if nothing is wrong. Elias, as the shadow, enters the room, his presence sending a ripple of whispers through the crowd. He approaches Marcus, his steps slow and deliberate, his dark suit making him look like a specter from the past. Marcus turns, his eyes widening in surprise when he sees the shadow, but he quickly composes himself, his smile stretching wider, though fear flickers in his gaze. "Mr. Shadow, good to see you," he says, his voice trembling as he extends a hand. "I hear you're an investor. Maybe we could collaborate." But Elias doesn't take his hand. He leans closer, his voice cold as ice. "Do you remember Elias Kane?" Marcus freezes, his hand slowly dropping, his face paling as if he's seen a ghost. "Elias. What do you mean?" His voice cracks as he tries to hide his panic. Elias removes his sunglasses, revealing his gray eyes, and Marcus stumbles back, his back hitting the bar. You can't be." "Elias is dead," he whispers, but his words are drowned by the party's noise. Elias pulls out his phone and shows Marcus the recordings he gathered, audio files of Marcus conspiring with Dana to frame Elias, and documents showing how he laundered money from Skyline Tech. "You sold our friendship for money, Marcus," Elias says, his voice steady but laced with pain. "And now you'll pay." Marcus begs for forgiveness, tears streaming down his face as he drops to his knees, clutching Elias's arm. "Please, Elias, I didn't mean to. It was Dana's idea. I was weak, I needed the money." But Elias pulls his arm away, his face unreadable. He steps into the center of the room and connects his phone to the party's speakers, playing the recordings for all the guests. Marcus's voice echoes through the loft, confessing how he framed his best friend for fame and fortune, and the crowd falls silent, whispers turning to gasps of outrage. Marcus loses everything, his career, his friends, even his family turns away as the scandal goes viral on social media. Elias watches as Marcus sits on the floor, surrounded by scornful glares, and feels his revenge is nearly complete. But the anger in his heart gives way to an emptiness that grows with each step. He remembers how he and Marcus once laughed together, dreaming of the future, and for the first time in a long while, he feels a pang of regret. But he quickly pushes it aside. His final target, Victor, is still free, and Elias knows he won't stop until it's over. Meanwhile, Victor, learning of Marcus and Dana's downfall, decides to act. He hires a hitman to eliminate the shadow, believing it's the only way to stop the wave destroying his life. Elias, returning to his penthouse, notices a shadow on the roof of a neighboring building through his window and realizes he's being hunted. His heart races, but he quickly composes himself, knowing he must survive to finish his mission. Chapter 11. Confronting Victor. You're in a dark warehouse on the city's outskirts, where the air smells of rust and gasoline, and the dim light of a single bulb swinging from the ceiling casts eerie shadows on the concrete floor. Elias has set a trap for Victor, knowing he'd do anything to eliminate the shadow. He sent him a message through an encrypted channel, posing as one of Victor's mafia partners, and arranged a meeting in this abandoned warehouse, where no one will hear their conversation, and no one will come to help. Victor arrives at midnight, his car pulling up outside, and he steps out, clutching a gun. His face is a mix of fear and rage, his eyes scanning the darkness for danger. He enters the warehouse, his footsteps echoing in the silence, and shouts, "Where are you? Show yourself if you're not afraid." Elias steps out of the shadows, his dark silhouette ghostly in the faint light. He removes his sunglasses, revealing his gray eyes, and Victor freezes, his gun trembling in his hand. You're dead," he yells, his voice cracking with terror. But Elias only smiles, his smile cold and merciless. "You were wrong, Victor," he says, his voice steady but filled with power. "I'm alive, and I've come for you." Elias reveals he knows about all of Victor's crimes, bribes, threats, even the murders he ordered to cover his tracks. He shows him the evidence he gathered, recordings, documents, emails he sent to the authorities before this meeting. "You destroyed my life, Victor," Elias says, his voice shaking with anger as he recalls the cold of his prison cell, the loneliness, the pain. "But now you'll pay for everything." Victor, feeling his world collapse, lunges forward, his gun aimed at Elias, but Elias anticipated this. He dodges, using skills he learned in prison, and disarms Victor with a swift move, sending the gun clattering to the floor. Victor falls to his knees, begging for mercy, his voice hoarse with fear. "Please. I'll do anything. Don't destroy me." But Elias doesn't listen. He hears sirens in the distance, the police, called by Sophia after Elias sent her all the evidence. Officers burst into the warehouse, their flashlights blinding, their voices booming. "Victor Reigns, you're under arrest for corruption, extortion, and accessory to murder." Victor screams in rage as he's led away in handcuffs, his face contorted with hatred, but Elias just watches, his eyes empty as a burned field. Elias steps out of the warehouse as the police take Victor away, standing under the starry sky, feeling the tension leave his body. His revenge is complete, all who betrayed him have paid for their crimes, but instead of joy, he feels a bone-deep exhaustion. He returns to his penthouse, where Sophia waits, her face full of concern. She hugs him, her voice trembling. "You did it, Elias. Your name is cleared. I published the article, and your case will be reopened." Elias nods, but his eyes are distant. He thanks her but says, "I don't want to be the shadow anymore. I want to find peace." Sophia smiles, squeezing his hand. "You will. I'll help you." Chapter 12. Forgiveness and Farewell. You sit in a quiet park in the heart of the city, where tall trees rustle in a gentle breeze, and the distant hum of traffic blends with the chirping of birds. Elias sits on a wooden bench, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the city in the distance, where skyscrapers gleam in the morning sun. His name has been officially cleared. After Sophia's article, the court reopened his case, declaring him innocent, and Skyline Tech returned the rights to the algorithm he created. But Elias doesn't want to return to the tech world that brought him so much pain. He decides to sell the company, donating the billions to charity to help those who've been wronged, as he once was. He thinks of Abel, his mentor, who taught him not just to survive but to find meaning in life. Elias feels his revenge was only part of his journey, but true healing comes through forgiveness. He decides to visit Marcus, who now lives in a small apartment on the city's outskirts, having lost everything: his fame, wealth, even his friends. Elias knocks on the door, and Marcus opens it, his face gaunt, his eyes filled with shame. He looks like a shadow of himself, dressed in an old sweater, his once pristine hair disheveled. "Elias," he whispers, his voice trembling as he sees his former friend. Marcus drops to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he begs for forgiveness. "I was a fool. I had no right to betray you. Please, forgive me if you can." Elias looks at him, his heart tightening with pain, but he feels the anger that held him captive for so long slip away. He extends a hand, helping Marcus to his feet, his voice soft. "I forgive you, Marcus. But you need to find a way to forgive yourself." Marcus nods, his tears falling to the floor, and Elias feels a weight lift from his shoulders. He also learns that Dana, in prison, has started working on herself. She enrolled in courses to help other inmates with legal issues and even wrote Elias a letter apologizing for everything. Elias reads the letter in the park, and though he doesn't respond, he wishes her well, feeling his heart finally free of hatred. Sophia becomes his close friend, and together they start a new project, a platform to help victims of injustice find truth and support. They work in a small office, where the smell of coffee mixes with the hum of a printer, and Elias feels, for the first time in years, that his life has meaning. He's no longer the shadow, no longer a victim. He's Elias Kane again, a man who found himself after the darkness. He looks at the city waking to a new day, feeling a peace that wraps around him like warm sunlight. His journey was long and painful, but now he knows he can move forward, leaving the shadows behind. Chapter 13, A New Beginning. You stand on the rooftop of Elias's new office, where he and Sophia celebrate the launch of their platform, Light of Truth. The air is filled with the scent of fresh evening breeze, and the city below glows with thousands of lights, reflecting the stars above. A small team of volunteers who joined the project laughs and raises glasses of non-alcoholic champagne, celebrating the platform's first day, which has already received hundreds of requests from people seeking justice. Elias stands aside, holding a glass of juice, his eyes filled with quiet joy as he watches his new friends. Sophia approaches him, her face beaming with happiness, holding a tablet with the first user reviews. "Elias, look," she says, her voice brimming with excitement. "We've already helped dozens of people in one day. One woman writes that thanks to us, her fraud case will be reopened." Elias smiles, his smile warm and genuine for the first time in years. "It's just the beginning, Sophia," he says, his voice soft but filled with hope. "We can do so much more." He thinks of Abel, his mentor, and the lessons that helped him survive prison and find meaning afterward. Elias realizes revenge was only part of his journey, but true strength lies in forgiveness and helping others. His platform becomes a beacon for those who've lost hope, and he feels his pain, which tormented him for so long, transform into something good. He no longer looks at the skyscrapers with anger or pain, now they symbolize hope, a new life he's building with Sophia and their team. He and Sophia become not just partners but true friends, their bond stronger than ever. She tells him about her dream, to write a book about the stories of people they've helped, and Elias supports her, promising to assist with research. They spend evenings in the office, planning new initiatives, and Elias feels he's finally found a home, not in the city, but in the people who believe in him and the purpose that gives him strength to move forward. Late at night, after everyone leaves, Elias stays on the roof, gazing at the stars now visible through a clear sky, the smog having lifted this evening. He remembers how he once dreamed of changing the world with his algorithm, but now he knows real change comes through kindness and justice. His heart is light, and he whispers, "Thank you, Abel. I'm finally home." The breeze gently brushes his face, as if in agreement, and Elias feels his soul finally at peace. He descends from the rooftop, his steps light, his heart warm. In the small office, where the lamp's glow falls on a desk cluttered with notes and coffee cups, he finds Sophia still reviewing feedback. She looks up, eyes shining, and says, "Elias, we got a letter from a boy whose mom was wrongfully convicted. She's coming home next week." Elias sits beside her, smiling as he reads the child's letter thanking the kind people who brought my mom back. It reminds him why he chose this path, for those who lost hope, as he once did. They plan a charity event in the park by the river, a place of peace for Elias, to raise funds for legal aid. Sophia agrees, adding, "It'll be perfect, nature, people, our mission." They laugh, recalling how Elias once avoided her as the shadow, and now they're a team changing lives. Elias feels his life has meaning, and as he walks to the river later, the moon reflecting on the water, he sits on his favorite bench, the gentle lapping of the water lulling him. He whispers, "This is freedom." Chapter 14, Peace in his heart. You sit with Elias by the river that runs through the city, where the water softly splashes against the stone bank, and the reflections of city lights dance on its surface like tiny stars. Elias comes here every evening as the sun sets behind the skyscrapers, leaving the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. He sits on an old wooden bench, his hands resting calmly on his knees, his eyes following the water flowing slowly and steadily, as if cradling his thoughts. Today is a special day. The charity event he and Sophia organized was a tremendous success. The park was filled with people supporting Light of Truth, families, volunteers, even a few individuals the platform had already helped. Children ran between the trees, clutching balloons, while adults listened to stories of those whose lives had changed thanks to Elias's initiative. The boy whose letter touched Elias so deeply ran up to him, hugged him, and said, "Thank you for bringing my mom back." Elias hugged him back, feeling tears well in his eyes, but they were tears of joy, not pain. Now, sitting by the river, Elias reflects on the day, his heart full of warmth. He no longer fears the past, for he's found peace in the present. His platform helps thousands, and every day he receives letters from those whose lives have changed because of his work. One woman writes that thanks to the platform, she proved her innocence in a case where she was framed, reuniting with her children. Another man thanks them for finding a lawyer who secured justice after years of struggle. These letters are his greatest reward, filling the void left by his revenge. Sophia joins him, carrying 2 cups of coffee, and sits beside him, her shoulder brushing his as she hands him a cup. "You look peaceful," she says, her voice gentle as the evening breeze. Elias smiles, taking the coffee, and replies, "I am peaceful, Sophia. For the first time in a long time." They laugh, reminiscing about how it all began, her persistence, his cold shadow persona, and how they became a team changing lives. Sophia shares that her book is nearly finished, and Elias listens, his eyes shining with pride for her. She adds, "I want to dedicate it to you, Elias. You showed me that even after darkness, you can find light." Elias feels warmth spread through his chest and says softly, "Thank you, Sophia. But we found the light together." The city hums around them, but here by the river, Elias hears silence in his heart. He's no longer the shadow, no longer a victim. He's a man who found himself after a long journey through darkness. He gazes at the water reflecting the stars appearing in the sky, feeling his soul finally free. Sophia places a hand on his shoulder, and they sit in silence, watching the city fall asleep as the night wraps them in its calm. Elias whispers, "I'm home," and his words blend with the sound of the river, carrying them toward the endless horizon. Chapter 15, A quiet night. You stand with Elias on the rooftop of his home, where the night sky stretches over the city like a velvet blanket, dotted with stars piercing through the urban glow. Elias stands at the edge, his hands resting on the railing, his gaze on the city below, glowing with thousands of lights, as if mirroring his own journey, from darkness to light. He reflects on all he's been through, the betrayal by Dana, Marcus, and Victor, the cold of his prison cell, Abel's lessons, the anger that burned in his heart, and finally, the peace he found by choosing forgiveness and hope. Today, he received another letter, from a young girl who writes that thanks to Light of Truth, her father was freed after 5 years of wrongful imprisonment. She sent a drawing of her reunited family, writing, "You're our hero." Elias holds the drawing in his hands on the rooftop, feeling his heart swell with warmth. He's no longer a hero of revenge but a hero of hope, and that gives him the strength to keep going. Elias returns to his room, where an old photo of Abel sits on the desk, kept from his prison days. In the photo, Abel smiles, his eyes shining with wisdom, and Elias feels his mentor would be proud of him. He whispers, "Thank you for teaching me to live, Abel," his voice soft and full of gratitude. Elias lies in bed, feeling the tension that held him captive for years finally leave his body. His breathing slows and steadies, his eyelids growing heavy, as if the stars themselves descend to close his eyes. The city falls asleep with him, and you hear his heart beating calmly, in rhythm with the faint hum of the streets below. You feel Elias's peace envelop you, his journey from pain to serenity becoming your own, lulling your thoughts and preparing you for sleep. You lie in a warm bed, surrounded by the soft glow of stars filtering through the city sky, feeling your worries melt away, leaving only deep, soothing silence. Sophia's voice whispers from afar, "Rest, traveler. Let the stars above the city guard your dreams." Her words are gentle as a breeze, and you feel your breathing slow and steady, your body relaxing, as if you're floating on a calm river under a starry sky. You drift off, wrapped in the magic of the city, knowing justice and peace always find their way. Your journey with Elias is complete, but his story lingers with you, a gentle lullaby guiding you to sweet dreams. Conclusion: you lie in a warm bed, surrounded by the soft glow of stars filtering through the city sky. You feel Elias's peace, his journey from pain to serenity, wrapping around you like a gentle blanket. All your worries fade, leaving only the deep, soothing calm this story brings. You hear Sophia's whisper from afar, "Rest, traveler. Let the stars above the city guard your dreams." Her voice is gentle as a breeze, blending with the distant hum of the sleeping city. Your breathing slows and steadies, your eyelids growing heavy, as if the stars themselves descend to close your eyes. You drift into sleep, wrapped in the magic of the city, knowing justice and peace always find their way. Good night, traveler. Sweet dreams. And until we meet again on Lunar Lullabies.